5 of the HubSpot ones are going to have to roll onto Salesforce. Like, that's going to create pain, create a lot of work, change all the company's standard operating procedures. And the benefit gets realized at the enterprise level, of course, because you've got the integrated data, but that individual company doesn't necessarily get any benefit from doing that. AI has made a lot of people very good at marketing very quickly. And it hasn't made a lot of people very good at delivering value very quickly. So there's no such thing as perfect, and they rely on the illusion, which hands up the data industry is probably partially responsible for, this illusion of perfect attribution, which maybe existed 20 years ago when Google was the only show in town for paid media.
You're listening to the Transformed with Data podcast with Graham Crawford, CEO of Crawford Macmillan. Graham is here to share something he's genuinely passionate about. He's going to show you how data can completely change the outcome for both people and businesses. In each episode, he sits down with real people who've done incredible things with data. But don't worry, these aren't your typical dry case studies. Graham and his guests bring you stories about leaders and innovators who saw something in their data that sparked a brand new reality. These are changes that tore through entire industries, upended company cultures, and sometimes even changed lives. So whether you're a data enthusiast or just curious about how to find the truth in your data, join Graham as he discovers how data becomes more than just numbers. It becomes the spark that ignites real, meaningful change. Let's get started. Thanks for listening.
Most people think financial data leads to better decisions, but Michael Young has seen what really happens when the number looks perfect, but the business still fails. As a former deals director at PwC, Michael spent years dissecting billion-dollar companies for M&A, spotting red flags buried deep inside spreadsheets. Now, as the CEO of Bay Business Group, he brings that forensic lens to small businesses and nonprofits, where every line item has a name, a face, and real emotional weight to it. In this episode, we're going to unpack the hidden behaviors behind financial statements, why sophisticated data can actually hurt small businesses, and the 3 data points that reveal whether a business will survive or stall. So let's get into it. Here's Michael Young. Welcome, Michael. Thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, appreciate it, Graham. Great to be on.
Great. So many cool things to talk about today. And, both of us have spent a lot of time buried in data in our careers. I'm particularly interested in the indicators that you have around businesses. And as someone himself who's had a background in Fortune 500 and now works in smaller businesses. For somebody on either side of those fences, what are some of the things and the patterns that you see in small business financial data that would shock someone who's only used to like Fortune 500 style way of dealing with it?
I mean, I think it really is, the problems are the same, just at a different scale. Often it comes down to looking at things in a slightly different way can have a big impact. And so I think at Fortune 500, it's often having good data, having it be a comprehensive data set. Whereas like for a small business, same thing, looking at things a different way, but they're used to only looking at these 2 things as knowing if things are going good or bad. And it's like, if they look at it a third way, okay, that is pretty impactful. And so I think that's often kind of big or small, that's often the challenge, is just getting a full view of what's going on, maybe a slightly different way.
And thinking about, the smaller businesses that you work with now, including mine, shout out to Michael and his awesome team. So thinking about those smaller businesses, what are some of the things that catch smaller businesses out? So, for example, we've spoken to marketers and brand people and product people on the show before, and the one they always count to is impressions. Like, people get carried away with how many impressions or views something has got when it's actually not always a good indicator of success. Is there an equivalent of that in finances that people look at and think, this number's good, therefore everything is rosy?
I mean, the classic example is just everyone just looking at pulling up their app on their phone and looking at their bank balance, and the small business that are just looking at that as good or bad. And yes, that matters, but often we try and get our owners to have a slightly more nuanced view of okay, let's try and understand what is driving that up and down is kind of the next step. And so, but yeah, that's the classic example, is we had try and get our owners just from okay, let's try and, yes, that number moved, but let's try and understand what made it move. And then we can hopefully, things that make it go up, we can do a lot and focus more on that. And so I think kind of coming back to the impressions thing, it's if this lever you think you're pulling isn't actually moving those dollars up, let's focus on the ones that we think are. And so that's, I don't know, that's often kind of the first step, is making people focus on financial numbers that aren't just the cash balance in the bank.
Yeah. I mean, I guess people could have realized revenue and then not paid for the services that they used to deliver that revenue yet, or money goes, as I've learned, money goes in and comes out at different rates sometimes as well. And the other thing that your team always reminds me to watch out for is the slow, especially in this world of like multiple apps and pieces of software and software platforms. Like, I think that can creep up very easily.
Yeah, and that's like, we had a client we were talking with on their software spend, and then like he was like, "Can you just tell me which apps I don't subscribe to? There might be an easier list to start with." And because often business owners are like, "Oh wow, that does seem like it's going to save my problem," and then you fast forward 6, 12, 24 months, and it's like an ungodly number of subscriptions to random things. And so some of those are useful, some of them aren't. But yeah, that is often one line item that creeps up way too quickly for some business owners.
And have you seen that in this, the more and more of the pieces of software are available, like as software engineering, and access to publishing things on the internet becomes more and more democratized with AI. Have you seen that increase and grow in the past couple of years?
Yes. I think it's still, I feel like it's more, there's like, in our world, there's like niche software that seems like it's going to solve one problem. And like Fortune 500, you have huge applications that are going to be able to fit a lot of it in. But in small business land, it's like it's pretty unbelievable the number of like applications that are on our stock with. Like, they may be creating invoices in a couple of different systems, they may be getting payments in a couple of different systems, they may be paying vendors in a couple of different systems, they then have like one accounting system. And it's like, wow, that is 6 systems for a $5 million company. Like, that's crazy, but it's for some reason it has to exist. And then there might be another application that tries to tie it all together. And it's like, that's just incredible complexity for a small organization. And so I think what we've seen is like, there's different software that tries to make each of those fit better, because basically some owner was like, hey, I think this would help me in this one instance. And so they then create a small app where that works for it. And so I think that's been, definitely see that. And yeah, I think especially with like low code, no code ability to kind of get cheap developing talent, like there is more people just trying to like hack together something that solves them and start selling a subscription based off that. So yeah, certainly.
And hack is a good word for it. I mean, I think it's very easy to stand something up that looks good, but something that integrates properly with the back end, that authenticates, updates the database correctly, like I think, at least my assessment, based on the current technology, as amazing as it is, like there's still demand for software engineering talent out there, particularly integration engineers and quality testing engineers, to make sure that everything works. And actually, the complexity you mentioned, I see that in the work that I do as businesses grow and get to the point where they'll call me and my team in. That then means not only that the business is scattered across the 6 different systems, and all the layers of complexity of that, but also the business's data is then scattered across those systems, and anything beyond, not just the financial data, but how the revenue flows, where your revenue sources are from, how you work out your lifetime value of customers, what your customer acquisition costs are, all of these really critical business metrics end up like federated across multiple systems. So it's no surprise then that as companies grow, they get into this spot where it's like, I don't know where all the money's coming from, almost.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, there was a client we were working with, like home services business, that had 2 service offerings, right? So like they put down fertilizer, they then came and turned on and off irrigation, and they had 2 different invoicing systems, and they didn't really have any idea which customers were in both, because it was just 2 very simple systems, and they didn't really need to, but that's just how it started. It was like, when they first started off with their first irrigation customer, they're like, oh, we're just going to use this for invoicing here. And so came in and like, it was like, do you know which customers you serve both for? And like, they had 2 different teams going out, 2 different like trucks and like everything. And I was like, one, they didn't realize the ability to like cross sell, right? So like, hey, what if I'm showing up this house 4 times a year for fertilizer? What if I showed up 2 more times to turn on and off irrigation? That was only like 10% overlap. So it was like, oh wow, like what if we sold to the other 90%? You could increase the size of the business like very quickly. And so that was one, just from like not looking at things a certain way, looking at kind of additional data and like just different data set sprawl, but having it be able to talk together and see a cohesive view of who all your clients were was like, oh shit, that would be really helpful. And so, yeah, that was one where I was like, it was almost like straight out of like the private equity playbook of, okay, how do we cross sell to clients? And it was like, oh, this was like a perfect use case of messy data leading to not great decisions.
Yeah, I mean, there's 10% overlap, and as you say, like whichever side of the overlap the rest of the customers are on. You can cross-sell the
Yeah.
the Venn diagram circle they haven't got back in there, and then increase your operational efficiency because you're doing both at the same time on the same visit. It's that's a big booster for sure. I'm sure you see a lot of small businesses come through, and it's a well quoted stat that not all small businesses are successful, and it's hard to stay established. What are some of the biggest indicators that you see? And this can be either qualitative or quantitative, like even in terms of founder behavior and attitude. Like, what are some of the biggest indicators for you that a business is going to be sustainable and successful as you see them come in?
Some owners are able to kind of just intuitively get the cash flow piece and understand like when cash is coming in, coming out. If the owner isn't like at all have some kind of some way to like keep the sense of that on their own, I think that's where it's really hard. Even if we're having to like, hey, by the way, you invoice this person, we need to follow up, like we can't get this invoice paid. If the owner sees that as like trivial or not important, then that's where it gets hard. And the owner not really getting the like payment terms and consequences of payment terms with customers, if that's like in one ear at the other, like they're just a salesperson, they just want to sign deals, like that's where it gets harder, is like, no, you have to like, we need to get this collected. And so their understanding and importance of like, when do I get paid? This is going to matter. Do I get paid every month? Do I get paid every 6 months? Like that is a huge part of the owner being successful, because if money's coming in consistently, you're able to understand when it's coming in, like that makes everything else a lot easier. So I'd say that is the like being willing to kind of roll up the sleeves on the customer's paying timing is a big indicator.
And when I thought about coming in and from all the education I took and the communities I joined and the coaching I got, like I try and think about it in 3 segments, right? So acquiring customers, delivering value to customers, and then there's a third segment, which is running the business, like operationally, running the business. And founders get caught in this trap because realistically, if you're going to scale and grow the business, realistically as a founder, you can only really be involved heavily or significantly in one out of those 3, but yet all 3 of them need to happen. So there comes a period of a season of hard, I think, as I've come to call it, where either you have to work 3 times as much because you're going to be involved in all 3 of them, or you recognize that you need to bring people in and invest in people to run and operate those other 2 areas that you're not focused in as much. Again, you have more data points on this than I do. I've only got my own business, but I've had focus as a really important leading indicator of success in a small business. So the willingness to focus on one product, to focus on one offering, and I think the psychological trap, as it was explained to me behind that, is entrepreneurs have inherently already been rewarded for changing what they do. So in my case, and in your case, like we were in big corporate roles, we left, we started our own business, and we've had a very rewarding experience. So we have a Pavlovian cycle of like, I changed what I was doing and I got rewarded for it, as every entrepreneur does. Yeah. So from what I've read, it's very easy to get into okay, I'm 6 months into this business and I've just hit one of those seasons of hard. So rather than address it, I'll just go, I'll add a product, or I'll start a second business or a third business or whatever else. Like, have you seen that play out in reality? Like people starting multiple businesses or multiple product lines, right, rather than scaling the one that they've seen initial success with?
Yes, and like we've had clients where it's like they've kind of go in the opposite direction of like they want to parse all the financial data to figure out where the answer is in the financial data, and it's like, okay, let's just focus on getting new clients and growing revenue with existing clients. Like that's what's going to matter. But they're like, they want us to cut the data a million different ways. And like, it was a data set of like 10 clients. And it's like, okay, there's only so many ways to cut this to like tell you, but it was just exactly that of getting, changing things. They had the Pavlovian reward of like, hey, I changed something. I focused on something different. And I got a different one. When really it was like, nope, we need to go get new clients and grow revenue with existing clients is ultimately what needed to happen. And so they tried all different kinds of things like reorganizing the team. And it's like, no, like that isn't the answer here. And so that was one where it was, through no fault of, I feel like small business owners get bombarded with all kinds of stuff and all kinds of like, teases of like, oh wow, that does sound really good on the surface. And so you change something to try and do it, which also goes back to like why there's so much software spend, because everyone gets like, oh wow, that does seem like it's going to solve some kind of problem for me. So no, I think we see that very well. And even then, like some of our team even gets frustrated when like, hey, we're trying to get owners to get respond to things and get things done for like, hey, how should this expense be classified, or how should I do this and that? And it's like, yes, we do need information, but that's also, I feel like the owner also focusing on like, nope, this week is all sales, this week is all this, and like they'll get back to us when they need to because they're on their own prioritization. And so I think that's part of the delicate balance we have with our clients is knowing like, yes, accounting is important, but it's not something like we are going to expect our clients to respond to every day because they do need to be focusing on the other elements of the business. And so I think,
Yeah, of course.
yeah, it is, focus is definitely valuable.
And those are the same ones who land on you in April and be like, okay, I'm ready to talk about tax now. So I've got 2 weeks. Let's get this tax sorted. I'm sure nobody else is asking questions about tax at this point in time. I love it. And yeah, the focus thing is, and you brought another ethos or point that I've heard so many times up into play there. And the example you use about the need more clients, the phrase I've often heard used is that the progress you're looking for lies in the work that you're avoiding. And some people we talked about the 3 elements of a business, right? Generating business, delivering value, and then running the business. And some people are inherently better at one of them. Some people are inherently worse at one of those 3. And then the natural human tendency, of course, is to avoid that. Going out and generating business is hard, right? You know that, I know that. But it's critical, and I think I see it in the entrepreneur communities that I'm in. It's very tempting to sit for days with a whiteboard, finessing your product and finessing your offering, and like wondering, how you're going to move people through your value stack and all of this wonderful stuff that there's many textbooks and YouTube videos about. But like, if there's no leads in the pipeline, then it's all for nothing at the end of the day. And what was the other thing you mentioned that I want to circle back to? Yeah, this is it's like, if I think about all the business intelligence teams that I've been part of and all of the data sets that I've collected for people over my career, like ultimately the P&L that your team presents is the scorecard. So ownership and accountability, I think are pretty critical as well. And I think, I don't know, maybe your team's got different feedback on me than I realize, but for me, the P&L is the scorecard. Like what's on the P&L is the result of what me and my team have done, right? It's not the other way around. It's not like, oh, you need to cut this differently to tell me a different story so that I can feel better, better about myself. It's not the the accountants and the advisors that you have are presenting the picture as is, to help enable you to make a decision. That it's not the secret is not in fiddling the numbers around to make yourself feel comfortable.
Yeah, there's certainly, even with a P&L, there's still different stories you can tell about it there that you want to tell. But I think that's where their clients, it's like some only want to look at it when things are going well. Others, like, we don't hear from if they're not going well. And it's like, we kind of just, let's get in regular cadence. Let's talk through, hey, here's what happened this month. If we're doing that consistently, then that helps kind of at least pass on that consistency focused message of like, because often the owners can then look back and be like, okay, what did I do this month, or what did I do differently that then resulted in this? And that helps make better decisions for running the business. And like, ultimately, like, I see our role as like, hey, our financial numbers should only help you make better operating decisions. Like, it's not meant to be like, and so yes, that it is a scorecard, and yes, but the scorecard is meant to help you make better operating decisions to get kind of where business owners are wanting to go. Some are just like, some want to double every other day. Others are like, no, I just want to stable that more on the stable side. And so both are fine, but like, let's just make sure we're tracking kind of where you're going. I think, yeah, like I'm obviously biased, but I think kind of the financial results is kind of the ultimate scorecard. But then that also is meant to then help as things are changing. Like, what do we need to operationally change to make these financial numbers come back to where we want them to be?
Yeah, it's a critical piece of data as far as I'm concerned, and that's why I prioritized like getting a partnership with someone like yourself as soon as possible in my journey, because I think it's such a critical piece of data to discern how a business is going and how you need to move resources around in order to never mind all of the legal, regulatory, financial liabilities and obligations that you have to the government while you're operating in this space. That said, though, P&L never tells the full story of a company, and I think you've been involved in lots of small businesses as well as analyzed, hundreds of M&A deals. Like, what are some of the let's go dramatic on it. What are some of the biggest lies or biggest things that are hidden in a company's financial statements that doesn't always give away its real value?
I think, going back to my previous life, I think so was helping basically private equity evaluate deals from a financial perspective. And so I think there's elements where, like, I think this private equity cobbled together 10 businesses over a course of 2 years. We're putting together kind of, hey, here's what the financials look like with these 10 businesses. But I think 10 businesses cobbled together over 2 years can be a little hard to, like, that financial statement, like, it is very different from kind of how they operate. It makes it look like it's one thing, but operationally right now it's 10 different things with 10 different systems and 10 different employee benefits and 10 different types of people, 10 different types of culture. And it's like, this isn't quite as uniform as maybe as what this one little pretty spreadsheet makes all this look like. And so I think that's where having the appreciation for, like, how do we get this culture into one place? How do we get this data all together so we can start leveraging some of the value that's out there? How do we how are we then using the numbers to then make sure we're reinvesting in the right spots in those 10 different businesses? I think that was one that I always felt a little funny about, was when these quote unquote roll-ups were happening and presenting kind of a pro forma view of all 10 of them together. It's like, this is we're pretending this is one thing is kind of pretty generous view right now. Yes, it can be, but often those 10 things are going all different kinds of directions. And so it probably wasn't as cohesive as what it looked like on the surface of the spreadsheet.
Yeah, I guess in that case, you're looking at, it's easy to sell the upside of, like, once we bring these 10 things together, in a roll-up, we'll get the operational efficiency benefits from, having one servicing platform, one invoicing platform, can you believe, right? One invoicing platform, one platform for whatever it might, one customer data platform, whatever it might be. But there's also going to be incongruencies as well of things like, hey, as a combined company, it no longer makes sense to offer this service, which represents 60% of one of the 10 companies' revenue, right? For example.
Yeah, or it's, hey, yeah, this one business you bought, like, something was happening that they handed off and we're kind of presenting, this is where it's going to continue to go, and it's really not going that direction, or vice versa, of, like, maybe we can pull bits and pieces from each of these 10 that are best and pollinate them across. I think saw it go both ways, where it wasn't, that cohesiveness wasn't really focused on afterwards. And I think if it's not, then that's where it starts falling apart, because it is 10 different pieces that aren't being operated together. And so I think focusing on that operational piece is definitely we undersold how difficult it was to then bring it together, actually, like, when we presented it as one, when it was really 10 different at the time.
Yeah, I mean, as I always say to my clients, like, change is inherently hard, right? We can design the most technically perfect data architecture and a flawless plan to migrate to it, but often, like, I think some of the biggest value that me and my team bring is the change management of, like, people are used to doing their jobs a certain way, and we're going to completely turn that on its head and make them use different systems in a different way, and different things are going to feel like a priority compared to what they were before. And even, larger businesses that are separated off into verticals. I think about this concept of tax, right? In order to bring, and the same is true of 10 companies in a portfolio company doing a roll-up as well, right? So each of the 10 businesses are going to have to go through some change pain or some change management pain in order to align to the vision for the rolled up company. And that's going to feel like tax almost, in a way, because even if their company's not going to realize any individual benefit, and sometimes it might even go backwards. CRM is the perfect example. Like, people love to talk about CRMs, and if those are on 10 different CRMs, you're going to want them on one CRM. So say you've got 5 on Salesforce and 5 on HubSpot, just for example, and then 5 of the HubSpot ones are going to have to roll onto Salesforce. Like, that's going to create pain, create a lot of work, change all the company's standard operating procedures. And the benefit gets realized at the enterprise level, of course, because you've got the integrated data, but that individual company doesn't necessarily get any benefit from doing that.
Yeah. And I think that's a good example, because it's also, what is captured in a CRM is very different from one organization to another. And the consistency that it's done is, like, it almost depends on exactly the person by person of how it's being captured. And so if there is a simple way to try and extract different things you want from it of each, I think that's that can be very helpful. But yeah, it is. I think there's been somewhat of a reckoning in the like lower middle market, like private equity world, just realizing that like you can't just do 5 acquisitions. You gotta now have a pro forma EBITDA of this, and I can now trade it at this. Like there is operational muscle that has to come in to really make sure you are capturing kind of all the benefits that you kind of see on the front end. And so I think that there's definitely been very different perspective. I feel like even in the last 5 years than there was 10 years ago, and like when people were coupling together all kinds of stuff. So yeah, it's that is the biggest thing that gets lost. I feel like is yes, we can change this. Yes, we can get them all into one CRM. Yes, there's many benefits, but the person that is going to be changing their behavior is that is sometimes doesn't show up in on the PowerPoint.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've had prospects that I've spoken to that I've ended up even offering a proposal to, because actually they come and talk about the need to consolidate a data infrastructure or pick a CRM and put it across. But the truth is they're just not collecting the data. You can put a CRM across any set of data, but if there's no primary key or way to join client activity across that data, like this is one of my bugbears with AI. AI has made a lot of people very good at marketing very quickly. And it hasn't made a lot of people very good at delivering value very quickly, or not yet, at least. I've not seen that come through yet. So CRMs are great at selling the benefits, but they rely on perfect, uniform, well-organized data that's sort of traceable across multiple systems. And like they sell the dream of, I'll every contact point with my customer, whether they call me or text me or email me, or visit my website, like it'll all be tied together in one neat place. But unless you've got the data infrastructure to connect those things together, like the CRM is just going to stand and stare at you, and create four different records for you as well. So
yeah, I mean that's honestly like with accounting, that's where it's like, okay, well we have to have the right answer, like, and so there is all these systems, all this data everywhere, but sometimes our job would be super painful because it's like, okay, well we have to have the right answer, like how, like what was invoiced, what was collected, like what is the correct answer on this. And so that can be like AI. Yes, AI can pull all this data out and aggregate it, but it's like, well, is that right or not? And so that, like, I feel like, I don't know, I mean, I'm obviously biased, but that's one of the biggest things that everyone has. AI is going to change accounting. AI is going to do this. And yes, it is, but there's still that element of like, well, is it right? And is it good? And so like, we're still far, I feel like, from having quickly being able to get to those answers of is it right or is it good?
Yeah, and there's always nuance to it as well. Like, even to pick an example of my own, like I was talking with your team just before we came on email about the P&L, and like one of my main clients, I think their August payment, because of holidays or their cycles, whatever, like ended up landing on July 31st. So I've now got this, what looks like a wildly successful month in July and a wildly unsuccessful month in August, because my costs proceeded on the typical thing. And that's the sort of nuance that would be really hard for an AI to pick out. Whereas for a human, it's like, well, obviously this just got paid a day earlier than it normally does, and it's throwing all the numbers off, right? You've got 2 payments in this month and 0 in this month. So therefore, there's nothing to worry about from this huge fluctuation that you're seeing. I mean, it's another thing that, in private equity world, obviously these issues get shaken out way before it gets to an acquisition. But you could go back 5 years, for example, and think of you could have a stock photography company that's got an incredibly healthy looking P&L. But, with the technology and tools that have since become available at the time we're all beginning to come available, that's not necessarily then an attractive company to do, because the world changes around it. And, it's again, the other tension that founders just have to deal with. Like, there's much advantage in focusing what you're good at delivering and carry on doing that and making it better and scaling it. But also, like, you need to be aware that the world changes around you, and what you need to offer might change as well. So thinking about small businesses getting started, like, what are the 3 data points or the 3 things that everyone who does it wants to be successful, of course, but what early 3 data points would you look at in a small business to establish whether or not it's going to be successful?
This is not a financial thing, but I think knowing the why, like, why is this business owner doing this? Like, what is their personal motivation for doing this? I think if it is like a genuine interest, a genuine passion, a genuine curiosity, like, that matters, versus if it's someone who's just like, hey, I heard you can make a quick buck doing this. And so, like, that ultimate reason why, like, that gets you through the gritty stage that gets you through the troubles, that gets you through all of that. Like that to me is like almost more important than, hey, I think I can make a quick buck doing something else. And so that to me, for the business owner who's going to devote a lot of time to it, like that, their why is what's going to get them through the challenging time. Because there is, I mean, it's lonely, right? Like there's no one else in the organization that quite has the same perspective where you can even really share everything with. And so I think that's the biggest thing that we often talk to our owners about is like, because we do see behind the curtains a lot, like we do have kind of more real conversations, I feel like, with the owners. And it's like that there's not only so many people in their Rolodex they can kind of share that have the same kind of behind the curtain view. And so I think that's kind of the other piece is like, do you have someone you can personally just connect with and talk through business issues, even if it's not. And so often we like to meet with our clients regularly. Yes, we are talking through like your software spend is going up. Yes, you sold more of X product instead of Y product. But it's also just like, hey, how are you? What's going on? Like how are things going? Because I think that there is only so many outlets that I feel like a business owner has for that. And so I think my advice to someone who is, I'm gonna start my own thing, what am I gonna do is like, one, know your why, because that's when you get you through, that's when you get you the grit to go through. But then two is like have people that you feel like you can like rely on and help you when you have challenging times and can just commiserate with you. Because I think those are the two things that have to kind of be in place for an entrepreneur who's starting from scratch to kind of really be successful. And yes, there are things kind of financially to look at. Like once we kind of get beyond that, like make sure we understand how we're going to, what our marketing plan is, kind of how we're going to get paid. When do we have a way to measure like when we can bring on additional people or locations or what have you, have some kind of consistent way to measure that. But if those first two things are right, like I feel like the owners more often than not, we can kind of work with them to get the right spots from there financially.
Yeah, and just a quick one on that last thing. This is just another tough thing that business owners have to deal with. Like if you go to the books and to the YouTubes and whatever else, they'll talk about, they'll sometimes oversimplify the business and make it like, okay, well, all you need to do is make your customer lifetime value higher than your customer acquisition cost, and that's all well and good. But as a data professional, you have to get many months and many years often in before you even know what those numbers are, because there's no such thing as perfect, and they rely on the illusion, which hands up the data industry is probably partially responsible for this illusion of perfect attribution, which maybe existed 20 years ago when Google was the only show in town for paid media, and like you ran a paid Google Ads campaign, people came through, and you got a pretty reliable customer acquisition cost from that. Especially in B2B nowadays, you're talking 6-7 touch points before someone will even call you. And then, what do you do? Last touch attribution? Do you do first touch? Do you do do you put in a survey question? Like, who knows, right? So there's no easy way to do it. So, people grossly oversimplify some of those metrics, which again, in a perfect world are easy to come by. Success isn't always easily measurable by data. I used to tell people this in corporate land, right, where performance is managed in a very kind of specific and normally distributed way, as you'll know. And when you're in a call center, it's easy to do performance management. Average call time, customer satisfaction, number of calls taken, et cetera, right? You've got all the numbers there, and you can put it on a screen in the call center and say, these are the best employees. Like, it's very easy to do. Obviously, the more complex the service you're delivering, or the more complex the product you're offering as a small business owner, the harder it gets to do. So yeah, tricky. And if you've got a multi-million consumer packaged goods online sales e-commerce business, then that's a lot easier to do than it is in a B2B services business in terms of the customer acquisition costs and the lifetime value. But back to that first point, a big fan of AI. I think it's going to do a lot of good for the world. And when used in the right way, in the right places, it's really valuable. Nowhere near replacing humans, of course. But one of the things that's accelerated in tandem with social media is this culture of instant gratification that we've got. Like, people go on TikTok or YouTube Shorts or wherever it might be, and you get something. Those algorithms are incredible. right? They will consistently deliver something that's interesting to you, that gives you a little shot of dopamine, that makes you want to scroll and do the next one and scroll and do the next one. And people are used to instant gratification. That coupled with what I mentioned before about people being amazing at marketing now, thanks to there are some things and patterns and certain pieces of human psychology that make certain marketing effective, right? And we've studied that and we've got a lot of data about that. But it's true of these tools, like, as you say, AI, start a small business. Like I see them every day. My thing, oh, just do this, like code something up, do a low code thing this weekend, pay for some Google ads, and before you know it, you'll have a 10K a month business. And like, it is just not that simple. Like, so I see and bump into entrepreneurs all over the place who are in that mindset, and they get disillusioned very quickly when they realize that AI is not a silver bullet. Low code, no code web pages are not a silver bullet. Reading one YouTube and doing whatever else. And I think you'll see the broken pattern of people around who've done the drop shipping, the affiliate marketing, the whatever the latest fad is, and sadly for them, online gurus have got very good at marketing what they sell, and selling the dream of overnight success. So yeah, it doesn't surprise me that you see people like that come through.
People spending time feel like they're marketing, feel like they're doing all kinds. They have a huge social media presence, and it's like, okay, I saw you didn't add any clients this month, but you spent all of your time on like posting on some kind of social thing, and it's like, okay, that probably, like, maybe we should. Have you thought about different ways to maybe approach it, or different ways to spend your time versus switching? Because I think there is coming back to the dollars, telling you if the likes are doing anything. I think that's where sometimes people can get that, get a little too focused on that from a marketing. And then they feel like it feels value add, but it's like, I'm not convinced that the dollar return on their time is the right way. Now, if that's what I'm doing, great. But that is, it kind of goes to that same reason of like trying to make a quick buck, trying to like sell some kind of learning solution. And it's like, I don't know.
And even the people that get it right, like I watched a podcast yesterday on a plane ride, and it was the guy who stood up a social, who made an app called Wombo. And I think that was one of the earlier ones where you could take a selfie of your face and it would put it on a silly video. So he made that, and then he made some sort of dreamscape background one after that with AI. And both apps, I think across both apps, he had 500 million downloads on the App Store, which is incredible success. They're free though, right? And no thought went into monetization. And he describes a moment where an investor came in, didn't like what they saw, and they had assumed it was going to go through, and then 2 months later pulled out. And then he looked at his numbers and realized he had negative runway. And this is a guy with 500 million app downloads, right? So again, it's the ultimate vanity metric, right? 500 million $0 downloads is still $0. Clearly a great product. I mean, there was a happy ending to that story, because I think he then ended up Nvidia came in, Nvidia invested in the company, and they then, I think, pioneered this model that you see now of like, well, you can do it for free, but if you want to do more than one a month, if you want to do 4 a month, you have to pay a weekly membership of 99 cents or whatever else, or you want access to our premium songs in the background, you need to pay another 99 cents. And then suddenly 99 cents times 500 million is a lot better number. As you getting close to the end and wrapping up now, if like you see data about small businesses, and that's why I've asked you questions about small businesses, right? Because you see a data set that many people haven't got access to about multiple small businesses and what makes them succeed and fail. Small business going forward, like if what you see could predict one thing about the way small business is heading, or the future of finance in small business, like what patterns do you see emerging, and how do you think the landscape is going to shift in the years to come?
It comes back to some kind of core value or core focus that is going to ultimately, that's whatever the business is focused on, doing it well, like everything else kind of falls into place from there. Now there's like we have, like, going back to the example of like government contractors, we work with a lot of government contractors. Some know how to win government contracts, which is but if it's in 10 different industries doing 10 different things, like it's very hard to run a business that way. But if it is a business they're just in one industry, they do one service, they're then branching out to different arms of the government to do things, like they're doing well right now. Like that client is doing well right now. I think they'll continue to do well. But the ones who came in over the last 10 years and like had 10 different services across 10 different agencies, like they're the ones that are struggling because they didn't have that focus on like what is it that we actually do. And so that is, and then those owners talk very differently about what it is that they do, what it is that they care about, what it is that they're and their why of like why they're doing it. And so I think that's like there's been some of a reckoning over the last 6 months in the government contracting land, and I think the ones that have focused on be competent in what they're doing and not just their ability to go win a random contract, like they're the ones that are sleeping well at night right now.
Yeah, it's a mysterious curtain that I've never walked behind the world of government contracting. So I have many hypotheses about how people win government contracts, but none that I'm out there testing, and none that I'm able to float on air. It's definitely an interesting world. I've seen, from in the entrepreneur space, I've seen a lot of people like aggressively niching, and we've talked about the limitations of low code and no code. But there are still people producing amazing software and platforms. Like there are, again, the marketing of it. Like people produce these brilliant online AI-driven platforms, and they credit it to AI. But actually, they neglect to mention that they're incredible marketers and incredible software engineers as well. So it's possible to put these things together. And I've seen what I think will lead into the kind of downfall of enterprise SaaS, like. Big companies like Salesforce, Workday, who focus on rather than they have both irons in the fire, right? They get more customers, but then they work really aggressively to expand the value of existing customers as well, by expanding the value of offerings. So like you go to Salesforce and they want to like so much. Same with HubSpot, so much more than a CRM. And HubSpot didn't even start there, right? Someone told me that HubSpot started as a blog software, right? And they have all these modules that they want to sell you, and all of that's in the interest of, and what it means is for smaller businesses, they're looking at either they have to use a kind of substandard product, or they have to swallow enterprise license fees for something that delivers way more functionality than they need. And actually Ramp, which you turned me on to, is a good example of this. Like this is aimed at smaller business, and I met one of the founders of Ramp at a conference. Did I mention that to you? And he said we're very specifically focused on businesses. I think he said with less than a certain number of employees. I can't remember what it was, like less than 25 employees or less than 100 employees. I'm not sure what it was. But AI and the accessibility of software engineering, and how easy it is to put products out, has meant that people can niche down far more aggressively than they've done before. And you'll know, like, Michael, if someone came to you like and said, I don't know, what's a service you might use? Like, it's hard to do for a horizontal service provider, but accounting, for example, like if someone came to me and said, okay, you've got Michael and his team, but like I specifically do accounting for people who do data consultancies with less than 10 employees, whose companies are less than 3 years old, whose founders, and they list all these things off, and you're like, oh, this was made for me. Like I'm going to move across. HR as an example. So if someone came and said, okay, rather than Workday, say you're a personal injury lawyer, and someone said, rather than Workday, I've got this thing, and it's only going to cost you $10 a month. And it does HR, but specifically for personal injury lawyers. And it's specifically, the features are set to match the way personal injury lawyers do business, the outputs that personal injury lawyers need. Like, you'd be like, oh, of course, I'm going to switch to that. So I've seen the emergence of some of those ultra niched offerings that I think are going to maybe start nibbling away. They're the piranhas that might start nibbling away at the tools of enterprise SaaS. So I think we'll see more businesses like that over the next couple of years.
Yeah, no, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, because it is like the hurdle has been developing the software and like in a scalable and cost efficient way. And like that cost is definitely going down now, and it can be tailored a lot easier to kind of who the ultimate audience is. So yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. That plus, I think, as we've talked about at length, like the cost of getting high quality marketing has also come down as well with the advent of AI. Is there have you got one thought that you would leave us with, like to the community of small business owners, like beyond the starting with why, like what's one piece of encouragement you give? As a successful transplant out of corporate into entrepreneurship yourself, you've been of great encouragement and help to me in my journey. Like, what's the one thing you'd say to someone who was in the early stages of standing up a business or thinking about doing it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just trust yourself. I think it's a big unknown that a lot of folks are jumping into, and it's, if your why or why you're jumping in is good, like you've got a good answer there. I think just trust yourself, like everything else. You can kind of figure out everything else from there. I think if you got a good why, trust yourself and go. Because I think there's a lot of folks that are in, at least from my previous life, like former people I went to school with, coworkers that are all like, that sounds great, but I don't know if that's the right time, and it's like, okay, figure out what you ultimately want to be accomplished with what you're doing with your time, and trust yourself from there and go. And so I think you can solve a lot of problems even that you probably didn't realize. And I'm sure you do it all the time too. It's like something comes up and it's like, that's all right, I'll figure it out. Like it's just, that's part of what being a small business owner is. Like that muscle gets very strong very quickly. So it's, I guess my advice would just be trust yourself.
Yeah, I'd reflect it's a leap, but one, it's never going to be the perfect time. And two, no one is ever going to give you, if you're waiting for permission or some validation that it's the right time to make the leap, no one's ever going to give it to you. No one's ever going to give it to you. Well, thanks, Michael, for coming on, and thanks again for the support you and your team provide me as well, way above and beyond a podcast appearance. I really appreciate you all, and it's great to spend some time chatting with you today.
Yeah, no, we really appreciate you, and I appreciate you having me on, and look forward to continuing work together.
All right, sweet. I'll speak to you soon.
Thanks for tuning in to Transformed with Data. If today's conversation gave you even one insight, one aha moment, or one new idea to take action on, do me a favor, subscribe, leave a review, and share this with someone who's ready to level up. Until next time, keep asking the right questions, keep challenging the status quo, and keep transforming with data.